Hey there, fellow nerds and geeks. Nabus here, and thanks for tuning in to the Hall H Show podcast. Episode 40 is an epic podcast for 3 reasons. 1, I finally met another person who's a big fan of the Detroit Pistons, Korean food, David Chang, and singing karaoke. 2, his comic book, Aberrant, as of today's date, April 16th, 2018, is in previews and is scheduled for a June 2018 release date, right before San Diego Comic-Con. And 3, it's episode 40, folks. I once heard Pat Flynn from the Smart Passive Income podcast once say that most podcasters stop after episode 7. So I'm Mike Tyson level ecstatic that this podcast that Alex Benedicto and I started to be a voice for independent creators has reached this milestone. Speaking of independent creators, please give it up for this episode's guest, Rylend Grant. I went big on this one, so it includes my Los Angeles Comic-Con 2017 interview with him, where he first talks about his comic book Aberrant, which will be published by Action Lab Comics. We also get into know him better and find out he grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and made a switch from politics to screenwriting for movies, and now uses his showbiz and screenwriting experience to create comic books. Secondly, it also includes my recent conversation with him at WonderCon 2018, where we get an update on Aberrant. If you check out the video version of this conversation, you can see the snazzy variant cover. We also talk about his publishing your first comic book panel that he did at WonderCon 2018, which also included a previous guest, David Pepose, the writer and creator of Spencer & Locke. As an added bonus, I have included the audio of this panel at the end of this podcast, since I know it has a lot of value for any of you aspiring comic book writers and creators. So please enjoy this podcast with my friend, Rylend Grant, and don't forget to check out his comic book, Aberrant, currently available at previewsworld.com. Use the codes APR181190 for the original, or APR181191 for the variant. If you would rather watch the video versions of my conversations with Rylend or his panel, please go to our YouTube channel or the blog post for this episode on our website, hallh.com. Welcome to the Hall H Show podcast. I'm here with a special guest, Mr. Rylend Grant.
Howdy, howdy.
Believe it or not, we are at LA Comic-Con, but
we just retreated into the woods. There's a forest behind us.
It was pretty loud inside, so we found a little quiet spot outside. But Ryan just got done with his panel with David Pepose. You want to maybe before we get to your introduction, you want to maybe talk about that panel really quick?
Yeah, the panel was called Directing Your Comic Book, which, you know, some people will take issue with my premise. I sort of cast the writer-creator of the comic book as the director of the book. I come from a film background. I have a master's degree in film directing from the American Film Institute Conservatory, so I approach a comic book as a writer-creator the only way I know how. I approach it like I would approach making a film. And so I cast myself as the director. My artist is, I don't know how the metaphor would extend, the cinematographer, the production designer, that sort of thing. And I think it works pretty well. As I warned in the panel, you can kind of take it too far. Your metaphor can easily become a meta 5. And there's certainly some artists out there, plenty of artists who consider themselves the director of a comic book, and they would take issue with that. In fact, I thought it was humorous that right off the bat, David took issue with my premise.
I was about to bring that up.
Yeah, but it was a good panel. It was, here's the thing is, David, who, I know you've had on before, and who's always good theater. Mm-hmm. He's a great interview, and he's great in a panel. He and I are process nerds, and I mean, we just love talking about, breaking down, how do you communicate to an artist? How do you, get the best out of a page and a panel and all of these things? The panel kind of grew out of a discussion that David and I had on the phone. I organize a lot of panels at cons, as you know. And at Long Beach Comic Con the last go round, you were there and you actually filmed the panel. I did a panel called Getting Your First Comic Published, and it had probably 6 creators on, just kind of telling their stories of how they sort of muscled their comic into existence. And great panel, and we're doing it again actually this weekend. So I talked to every panelist on the phone before, and these were like 10-minute conversations. We're just checking in. Hey, this is how it's going to go. Blah 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 blah. And then David and I get on the phone, and man, I mean, we blinked, and 2 hours went by. And when I was talking to the LA Comic Con people about which panels I might want to moderate and organize this go round, the first thing that came to mind is like, man, what if we had a room full of people just listening to that conversation that David and I had, and I think it proved to be despite the technical issues that we had, I think it proved to be a pretty good panel.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I had a good time listening to, I guess, sort of the compare and contrast of both of your approaches to how you get things done. Yeah,
it was very different approaches, and it was kind of the spirit of the thing. You know what I'm saying? It was I might have said this in the panel, and maybe I didn't, but a few years back, I was sitting in the audience, in a panel like that, and I was a screenwriter. I mean, I was already kind of a storyteller, and I was trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I do this? How do I write a comic book, and how do I communicate with an artist, and all of these things? And the only reason I was able to finally do it, to finally manifest it, was that I sat in panels like this, and I listened to how other people did it, and I watched how other people did it, and I took a piece from this person and that person, and I threw out what didn't kind of suit me, and so I was just trying to sort of provide that panel sort of distilled, for everyone else, and it worked out. I mean, we had a lot of, the highest compliment is when you walk out of the panel and you have people kind of cornering you with questions, and people who are inspired.
We must have spent maybe a good 10-15 minutes after the panel just talking to other people.
Yeah, and it was, again, and I was that guy a few years back, and so it's really rewarding to kind of be able to just sort of pass on some wisdom that I stole from someone else who's much smarter than me, much more experienced than me. Yeah.
Speaking of other people, it seems like, well, I guess from the panel that I first met you at Long Beach, you do a lot of collaboration.
A lot of collaboration, but you mean in the comic sense? You mean in the movie sense?
Well, I guess since we're talking about the panels, for instance, like how do you sort of build that sort of community?
A community of other creators. That's a really good question. Here's the thing: is I decided I want to do this a few years back, and I didn't know how to do it, and a lot of people were very sort of kind to me, and they gave me a lot of their time and a lot of their wisdom, I wouldn't. My book Aberrant is about to be released by Action Lab this winter. That's amazing. It's been a long journey, and Aberrant wouldn't be a reality if people weren't very generous with their time, and so I try to do the same for a lot of people. And I try to sort of surround myself with people who are kind of like-minded that way. And so the people on my panels, again, I organized 3 panels here at LA Comic Con, and organized some panels at Long Beach Comic Con, and I'm trying to organize some panels for San Diego Comic Con, I just try to. I mean, here's the thing: is it's good for everybody because it's good for me because I get to kind of like steal little bits of wisdom from these people, and their knowledge rubs off on me. And then the people in the audience, they're obviously getting something from it. But then also a guy like David Pepos, who did Spencer and Locke. The guy just has a great book.
It's awesome.
And not everybody knows about it. And when you put it up on a giant screen in front of 100 people at a con, and you say, hey, Dave wrote this amazing book, and he is down, on the convention floor at table whatever 50C or however it works. I don't know how it works. He's signing books. You need to go down and get this.
Right.
I mean, it's how this thing works, and I just try to be part of the con ecosystem. Yeah.
Before we get to your book, you mentioned journey earlier. Why don't you tell us about your creative journey from? You grew up in Detroit.
Yeah. I grew up in Detroit, just kind of like a movie and film nerd, and I thought I was gonna go into politics. Believe it or not. Grew up in a really Republican household.
Okay.
Which is odd to say now because I'm pretty left-leaning at this point.
All right.
Let me just get that out there right off the bat. I'm not going to hit too much on that. But my dad had me at age 10 standing with a sandwich board at a polling place, campaigning for George Bush Sr. Vote for Bush. Vote for Bush.
Okay.
And I did something for every major and local election until I graduated high school. Had named positions on Senate campaigns in Michigan. I would go into high schools on behalf of campaigns and register people to vote.
Oh, wow!
And so I went to college at the University of Michigan to study to study political science, to be a political operative, and I got there, and sort of really dove into the deep end of politics, and realized that things weren't black and white, man. I went to Michigan is one of the most liberal institutions in the world, and I grew up in a very conservative household, and those things kind of slammed together. And so it's the classic kind of college story where it ends in a nervous breakdown. I'm about to start the second semester, and I'm registered for all these political science classes, and I sort of wander around campus, and I come in, I'm going to date myself, but the moment the telephone registration system opened, and I drop all my classes, I pick up a course guide and start flipping through, and I end up registering for 2 film classes, an environmental science class, and an art history class. And a few years later, I graduate with a triple major in film, dramatic writing, and art history. And so,
now, were you always interested in movies as a sort of a?
Yeah, you know what? If I look back, it was what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
Childhood wasn't great. Growing up in Detroit, I grew up in a housing project in Detroit, and that has its own pitfalls. But movies were the escape, and movies were always the passion, and I just never believed in a million years that you could get paid to do this, or that there were people that actually made these things.
Right.
And you go to a university like Michigan, and everything's possible. And I tried it, and it was doable, and I thought I was pretty good at it. And so I came out to LA. I had to go to grad school at the American Film Institute. I wrote a script called Drive, which won the Final Draft competition. Final Draft is the classic screenwriting software.
Nice.
And that kind of launched me. I got hired to Penelope Cruz, of all people, hired me at 24 to write a movie for her.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. I've written in Hollywood for about 13 years now.
What movie was it?
It hasn't come out yet.
Okay.
Oddly enough.
All right.
This is how Hollywood works. I have been paid handsomely for about 13 years to write movies that don't get made. That's how Hollywood works. I have a very nice house in Eagle Rock, and I'm doing pretty well. The Hollywood Hills are full of screenwriters who haven't had anything made. Oddly enough, though. That movie's back kind of in the queue, and it might get made next year. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll have to look out for that one.
It's called Haunted Heart. It's directed by Fernando Trueba, who is a Spanish director who won the Oscar for foreign language film a few years back with Bella Polk. Really talented guy.
Nice
character. It's one of those movies. I mean, here's the thing: is there aren't a lot of Hollywood makes good blockbusters and everything, but this is a small, really beautiful, artistic movie. Those don't get made anymore, and so I'm really excited to maybe see a couple of life.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that come to fruition.
Yeah.
So, along your journey to making movies, was there sort of a particular movie that maybe you remember as a kid that really made an impression on you, that really, maybe if you look back in time, that's the movie that sort of maybe sparked the interest in movies as a career?
Yeah, I mean, you want me to pick one movie, but that's impossible.
You can pick one.
Yeah. I mean, movies were always the escape. I just remember, we had pirated HBO when I was a kid,
Okay.
and I remember taping movies off of HBO and Beverly Hills Cop, 48 Hours, Major League.
Oh, yeah.
Even Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade. I would tape these things, and I would literally wear the tapes out.
Coming to America.
Yeah, Coming to America is incredible. Yeah, there's a Coming to America reference in Aberrant. I actually showed it at the panel.
Okay, no wonder I had that stuck in my head.
McDowell's, remember?
Right,
it's in the background.
Got it.
Coming to America is probably like a top 10 movie for me. Here's the thing, but so I love these things, but again, never in a million years this dirtbag kid from a housing project in Detroit would think that you could actually do this as a living or as a career. So in 1994, I saw Pulp Fiction, and I'm like, man, this is what I want to do. This is, in my wildest dreams, if I could pick one thing to do, it would be this.
You want to be a dancer?
Yeah, that's really good. I would be a hoodlum for a guy like Marcellus Wallace, and get killed on the shitter. That's my ideal character arc. I'm just like, man, I was just blown away. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it, and I'm like, this is for me. But again, it just didn't seem possible. And then same year, I see Clerks by Kevin Smith,
right,
and I'm like, man, I can do this. I mean, Kevin Smith, he had nothing. He got a camera. He put about $20,000 worth of cost on his credit cards, and he just made this thing. It was fucking brilliant. I mean, it's still maybe the one of my favorite movies.
Wow.
And it took a couple of years for it to sink in that holy shit, you actually could do this. But yeah, those are the formative movies. And then your taste kind of, when you really kind of dive into this, if you want to ask me what my favorite movie is, what I think the perfect movie is, Fargo by the Coen brothers is just, if I made that movie tomorrow, I could die the next day and be happy. I just think it's brilliant. It's kicking on all cylinders. It's
If I don't know why, since we're sort of in that genre, like Usual Suspects is like a
Yeah, I mean that's that's a classic. I mean, you want to talk about. I feel like Hollywood has spent the last couple of decades trying to capture that lightning in a bottle again. It was so amazing.
Right.
And Bryan Singer has obviously since proven to be like one of the more prolific directors that we've seen in Hollywood. But yeah, great script. It was actually another formative thing. When I was at Michigan, we had Christopher McQuarrie, who wrote The Usual Suspects for a week, teaching our screenwriting classes.
Nice.
And man, that guy's a smart guy. I'm here because of experiences like that.
Well, obviously, screenwriting plays a big influence in your comic book writing.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, how do you stay current? Like, how do you think of ideas or come up with ideas? Yeah, for screenwriting and for comic books.
Yeah, God, that's a really good question because, well, here's the thing: is like, every writer just keeps a notebook, and you get a brain fart, you write something down. The reason I moved into comics was because Hollywood became so wildly limited in what they will greenlight.
Okay. Like artistic freedom and.
Yeah, well, it's like here's the thing: is like a lot of things have happened over the last 10 years or so. Like since I got into the film business at the absolute worst time to get into the film business. So I come out and I kind of break as a writer. And a few years before that, man, you could wipe your ass with 120 three-hole punch pages, and you could sell it for a couple of $100,000. And as soon as I got into the business, that kind of dried up. Well, before you go on, it's funny you mention it because I think at Long Beach Comic Con, I was in a panel with it's for like celebrating Extreme Studios' 25th anniversary, and like Matt Hawkins was there, Todd Knock, and Norm Ratman. How smart is Matt Hawkins?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that guy. I will listen to Matt Hawkins read the ingredient list on like a bag of Doritos.
Right, and there was back in the day they were selling like 500,000 copies of a particular issue, like no problem. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's changed so much. For the better and for the worse. But here's the thing: is like as I said, like I came up during the Sundance movement, and I decided that I wanted to write movies, and I came to Hollywood to do Pulp Fiction and to do Fargo, and then by the time I got here, they're like, "Oh, we're not making those anymore." What happened is the writer's strike hit. Right at the same time that the financial crisis hit, and things just went chaos ensued, basically.
Now you're doing Titanic and...
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood, used the whole thing as an excuse to completely remake the way they do business. Mm-hmm. The whole independent film movement kind of dried up, and it moved on to TV, which sucks for people who had a name in film like me. But because of that, we have Breaking Bad, and something I always say is that 10 years before Breaking Bad would have been a Sundance movie. Today, Pulp Fiction would be a 10-episode series on Netflix. That's just how much the business has changed.
Right.
And so basically overnight, Hollywood was making about a third as many films as they were making, again, just like a couple of days before. These studios, they're run by these big conglomerates. And so they measure success in terms of billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars at the very least. And so for them, I heard the story that if Bill Gates was walking down the street and he saw a $100 bill, it would actually cost him money to stop and pick up that $100 bill.
Right.
And I don't know if that's true, and there's probably a way to look at it where it is and it isn't. But this applies to the studios because you have these massive conglomerates who measure their success in hundreds of millions of dollars. And so for them, like doing a small movie and making $5 or $10 million, it's the same as losing $5 or $10 million. It doesn't even register for them, So yeah, that became difficult. And so I mean, back to your question in terms of so for the longest time, it really limited the ideas that I would entertain. It's like, okay, well, I can't sell this anywhere. So why would I even entertain it? So I would just toss these ideas out. But these are the ideas I was really passionate about. And then, at the same time, there was this boom in comics where you had all these smaller labels popping up. And all these other opportunities, and self-publishing became a big thing. And so suddenly, all these things that you couldn't do in film, you could do in comics, and that became really tantalizing to me. And so that was what kind of pulled me towards there.
Okay.
The other thing that happened was in film there was the IP revolution, meaning that you can't sell an original idea in Hollywood anymore. Nobody wants to make a movie based on original script. Everything has to be a book first, or a comic. And so what happened was, I write a lot of my movie stuff with a partner, and there was a period of time where we sold a lot of movies just as scripts, and then it became very difficult, and so we sort of hacked the system. We realized, okay, well, Hollywood wants IP, everything has to be based on something, so let's take our movie ideas and make IP first, and then we'll sell them as movies. And so we had this idea called Thief Coach, which kind of takes the classic, Hollywood makes one of these films every couple of years where an inspirational coach type figure, whether it's Coach Carter or Freedom Writers or something like that. They take a ragtag group of kids and they teach them about life by teaching them how to play basketball or swimming or something like that. It's a classic story, and everybody always loves those movies. And so we had a movie like that, but it was kind of that movie on crack. And so our protagonist was a real deal professional thief, like Neil McCauley from Heat. Robert De Niro in Heat. And the idea is, he's doing his it's the cliche of every heist movie, right? The one last job, I'm going to do this, I'm going to retire, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. His protege doesn't take kindly to him retiring. So short and sweet, protege, they do their last job, protege shoots him, takes the money, leaves him holding the bag. He goes to prison. He spends 10 years in prison just wanting revenge on this guy, right? And he comes out, and the twist is, over the course of those 10 years, his protege has taken that money that he stole from him, become the biggest gangster in Detroit. And so this guy's untouchable now. Nobody's going to go against him. What this guy wants is he wants his revenge. And how does he get his revenge? He's a thief, so he wants to rob this guy, but he can't put a crew together. And so he takes this, he plucks this young drug crew off the corner, and he teaches them how to steal. He teaches them how to rob this guy. And so it was a great idea for a movie, but for the life of us, we couldn't sell it as a pitch. We couldn't sell it as a movie. Everything needed to be based on IP. And so I'm like, well, let's give them IP. And so we wrote this thing as a short story, and we got the short story published. And literally the next day, we had a bidding war.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we had a bidding war over it. People are just crazy for IP in Hollywood.
Incredible.
And so we had Robert De Niro and Brett Ratner on one side, and Justin Lin, who directed a lot of the Fast and the Furious movies and the last Star Trek movie, on one side. And it was beautiful. And And a lot of people were skeptical. They're like, okay, this was lightning in a bottle, a one-time thing, and we've done it twice since. We set up a movie with F. Gary Gray, sort of in the wake of his Straight Outta Compton success. Okay. Big sci-fi thing. Right. And then we have another one that's a TV series in development with this guy Matt Shackman, who's a brilliant TV director who, the episode of Game of Thrones that everybody was like gaga over this last go round with the dragons, where
at the end.
You know what I'm saying? It was the big episode where it was like they finally unleashed the dragons, and the Lannister army just gets, Jaime almost dies, ends up in he directed this episode, and so he has, he had a lot of heat in the wake of that, and so with him we kind of set this thing up, and so this ends up being kind of a long-winded story, but how do I get into comics? Finally, like, comics were always a first love. I was a huge Marvel nerd growing up.
What were some of the favorite titles you read at a young age?
Oh God, the classics really get me. I was riveted by the Civil War arc, and when I'm not the original Civil War arc, and it sounds a little bit cliche to say that now that we've just had the giant Civil War movie, when I was younger, I literally read every book, and I'm not just talking about like the proper Civil War titles. I'm saying, like, how it was, like, and Marvel still does this, where like Civil War infected every title in there, and if you look at it in the end, there were like 113 books. Mm-hmm. In that Civil War series, where and I've read every single one of them 3 or 4 times, and that was the sort of thing. And then and so huge Marvel nerd, and you look at, Iron Man over the years, the stuff that they've dealt with. You're talking about Iron Man as like an alcoholic in the 70s.
Right, I remember that one.
Yeah, that demon in a bottle arc. It's just nobody was dealing with that sort of stuff at that point. Right. And, Comics Code and all that stuff. Those issues were just, they just really affected me growing up. And then, of course, I was around for like the Image Revolution, and and then my taste really started to refine later when 100 Bullets, Brian Azzarello was just was formative. I had never. The beauty of that is that you have these really, each sort of volume is its own contained story. That's this really amazing revenge tale. Right. But then when you put them all together and you kind of look at the thing from up above, there's this larger story that's being told, and everything kind of like fits into this. It's a cog in this giant machine that's gorgeous. And really, like, if you look at that stuff, it's like modern television. Mm-hmm. Like, they take so much inspiration from that stuff. It's like, Brian Azzarello was already telling these stories. Like,
well, it's probably because writers for TV grew up maybe reading his stuff.
Yeah. They're taking the same inspiration that I was taking. Yeah. It's what you're getting at, and it's a very intelligent comment, is that, like, the barriers between film and television have so broken down over the last few years, and you have this back and forth, and people are working in all these mediums. David Pepos, again, is he's a comic writer, but he's writing TV shows, he's writing movies. His comic was optioned as a movie. Right. There's all this back and forth, and so when I saw this happening, again, any big idea I have right now, this is what's changed over the years. Was I would take it to my managers, I would go out and pitch it, I would write it as a spec. I never think of doing that anymore, and that's how the business has worked for 50 years now. It's okay, I have this great idea, and so, is it a short story? Is it a comic book series? I have 4 comic titles in the pipe right now, and they were all things that, I don't know, even 3 or 4 years ago I would have wrote as movies first. And the beauty of this is, again, when you write for 12 or 13 years in Hollywood, and you write these movies that you think are great, you wouldn't spend your time doing it if you didn't. Right. You get tired of, like, not seeing them get made. So little gets made in Hollywood these days. Like, if you write the greatest script in the world, you're lucky if it's on a screen somewhere in 5 years. I just told you, man, this Haunted Heart script that I wrote for Penelope Cruz, it's an amazing script. Hopefully 14 years later it ends up on a screen somewhere, and that's no way to live, man. And so you write a comic book script, and you immediately hand it off to an artist, and the next day you have layouts. You see it come to life, and man, that's like, when I got the first test page on Aberrant back from an artist, I cried. Seriously, I'm not ashamed to say it. I don't want to sound like a wiener.
No, that's not. I love that. That's awesome.
But it was like, man, this is why you do it.
So let's jump into your comic book. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Aberrant. God, yeah. So Action Lab, great publisher. I'm really loving the guys over there. Dave DeWanch has been, really instrumental in kind of getting this thing going. Yeah, Aberrant is, here's the thing: is Aberrant. God, I could call it a military book,
right.
But that's not quite fair. Basically, the initial pitch was Aberrant kind of centers on this outfit of the military, the U.S. Army, called Article 13, and basically what they are is JSOC. I don't know if you know what JSOC is, but
it's like, is it judicial or
no? The what is it? Joint. God. You're putting me on the spot here. JSOC is a special operations, basically like special forces team. Even though special forces is just the Green Berets.
Maybe I was thinking about JAG.
Special operations. No, but so they are a kind of component command of SOCOM, which is just the larger kind of military sort of operational apparatus. Special Operations Command, but they JSOC was a unit that reported directly to Dick Cheney.
Oh, okay.
And so early on, Iraq and Afghanistan, those wars were fought mostly by JSOC, and it was this military unit that wasn't under the Congress or the Senate. They couldn't say anything about what JSOC was doing.
Really?
They didn't report to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They reported directly to the executive branch, and that obviously provides like it's a political conundrum. It's in a lot of ways, and so I thought that was a very interesting thing. And so my original idea for the book was, okay, well, what if you had a JSOC that only dealt with superhuman, affairs, basically, issues, and so Aberrant kind of reimagines our world. How would the war in Afghanistan have changed necessarily if there were people that had superpowers?
So does it take place during that time period?
Well, it takes place in the present day, and those things are still going on.
Okay.
But the first issue starts out, and it feels like Black Hawk Down or something like that.
Okay, got it.
My books are very filmic, just because I come from a film background. And it feels like a Ridley Scott movie, in the beginning. And for the first 6 pages, it's just it's a special forces unit going to respond to this basically like an Al-Qaeda affiliated madman is kind of taking hostages at a gas plant in Algeria. Mm-hmm. And this was actually a pluck from the headlines thing. This happened, and this is what I try to do with Aberrant, is I take events like this that actually happened, and then, okay, well, let's turn it on its head. Let's reimagine it. Okay, well, if there were people that had superhuman powers, how would this event have changed? Mm-hmm. And so they go there, and we think we're watching that Ridley Scott movie, and we think we know how this is going to go down, and they get there, and they pick the wrong door, and it's full of people with powers, and all hell breaks loose.
Okay.
And so, at its heart, it's the story of this guy, David, who is the leader of this team, and in issue 1, he loses his entire team to a superhuman attack, mm-hmm. and he's pissed off about it. And he basically wages a very brutal, sort of one-man war on the eccentric billionaire that he thinks is responsible for the death of his team. And it gets really ugly, and it gets really fun, and it really feels like a kind of kick-you-in-the-teeth action movie, mm-hmm. along the lines of Fast and the Furious or something like that. I mean, these are the movies that I'm loving these days, the movies that I get paid to write.
Right.
And then, of course, it kind of... he thinks that this guy is responsible, and then he peels back a layer and realizes, well, it wasn't him, it was the guy behind the guy. And when he gets to that guy, well, there's a guy behind, and suddenly this larger, vast conspiracy, this government military conspiracy sort of rears its ugly head, and there are plenty of twists and plenty of turns and mm-hmm. plenty of, fits of ugliness. And yeah, I mean, hopefully it ends up being this kind of like really interesting, layered political thriller, hopefully. Cool.
And in the panel, you said it took about 3 months to write, and
God, yeah. I mean, I was talking about the artist relationship, the artist-writer relationship. I actually, I wrote the first issue of Aberrant in a week or two.
Okay.
Then it took maybe about a year.
Okay.
To actually get the first issue finished.
We're just trying to assemble the right team.
You try to assemble the right team, and there's just a lot that goes into, in the beginning, you got to get an artist, you got to get a colorist, you got to get a letterer, you got to get a guy who's going to do that. Maybe you luck out and you get a guy that can do all of it.
Right.
There are some people. I think of Lisa K. Weber, who was on the first panel I did today, the Hex 11 panel, and she's just like a one-man band. I mean, she puts the whole book together. And
wow.
She has an amazing writer, Kelly Simulano, and she has a producer, Lindley Forrest, who's amazing. But I'm the guy putting all this together, so I have to bring this team together. But there's just this period of time where it's like you're trying to figure out what the book looks like and what the feel of the book is, and you're trying to, it's the rule of these things is that, issue 5 will take you a month to do from start to finish. Issue 1 might take a year of your life,
It's all about like setting the right tone and, because it's just a precedent for the rest of the series.
Yeah, I mean, you need to figure out what the language of the book is. Yeah. And you're figuring out, you're doing the character designs and you're doing the, again, the mood of the book, the color palette, all of these things. Right. And then it was a combination of, I hadn't done a comic before. I mean,
so this was your first one?
This was my first one. I have 4 in the pipe now, so I've been around the block plenty of times, and this has been a little delayed in getting released, so we're kind of around the block. So you talk to me now, I can do it a lot faster, but I was figuring out how to do this because people were so generous, to me with their time and their wisdom. I try to pay it forward for whatever it's worth. I'm not nearly as experienced or or as knowledgeable as some of these people, but hey, I try to pass forward what I can.
Cool. And you said some pretty cool things about trying to find or how to build your creative team in the panel. Like you have a few people that are spread out globally.
Oh God.
You want to sort of touch on that, because I thought that was a pretty good.
I mean, here's the thing: is if you're sitting out there, and I have a feeling that a lot of your listeners, your viewers, whatever you want to call them, they're interested in this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They're probably sitting at home and they want to make comics. And they're probably like me when I was watching Pulp Fiction, like, man, I want to do this, but I have no idea how to do it. Right. What I will say is it has never been more possible to do this than it is right now. 5 years ago, even, it was a titanic undertaking. It's not to say that it's not a titanic undertaking now, but it's so much easier in the age of social media and crowdfunding and Dropbox and video conferencing. It used to be, even 5 years ago, you would have to come to a con like the LA Comic Con. You'd have to walk through Artist Alley or go to one of these like con meetups, which they're still very valuable. I recommend them, but it can be needle in a haystack, you don't just want to find a good artist, you want to find the right artist for your book, and it used to be so difficult, but these days, there are like dozens of Facebook groups out there now, just full of, the Connecting Comic Book Writers and Artists group on Facebook has something like 25,000 members.
Okay.
And it's literally just like, it's amazing artist after amazing artist, and developing artist after developing artist, just posting their work online, being like, hey, what do you think? And man, I check it every day, and I keep a running list of people, and I love this artist, I'm going to use them for something down the line. I love this artist, I'm going to use her for something down the line.
So just list off a couple of the countries where some of your creative team's from.
So I have 4 books in the pipe now. Most of which I can't discuss. I'm going to be that guy. Okay. Pepos loves to do this. So you've had him on before.
Well, we should have met at a bar.
Well, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you because anyway, I'm going to be that guy.
That's pretty good. You sound like it.
Yeah, that was a good Pepos. So anyway, so 4 books in the pipe. I have an artist from Hungary.
Okay.
I have 2 artists in Brazil. I have an artist in Mexico.
Wow.
And imagine, 5 years ago, you couldn't have done this. You know what I'm saying? You just couldn't have. My go-to colorist is in Indonesia.
Okay.
My letterer is in the UK. Yeah. And that's amazing. It used to be, you guys used to have to be like, maybe you get on the phone, but you used to have to meet at a con like this. And now it's just like you meet each other online, you video conference.
Internet's a beautiful thing, man. It just breaks down so many barriers. It's kind of levels the playing field a bit.
Yeah, and the working relationship is amazing because it's like, you're talking to these people, and you have to figure out how to work, because if you're my artist, we can just, we can communicate, but you're dealing with the colorist in Indonesia, like English is not his first language.
Of course.
And so you have to be very careful in how you how you communicate. You're trying to communicate. And, a lot of times I have to like take a screenshot of a panel and say, hey, and maybe color it in myself a little bit. I'm not an artist, but hey, do this, and he gets it immediately. Here's the thing: is like they love to apologize. Like, I'm sorry, my English isn't great. Blah blah blah. It's like and what I always say is like hey, how many languages do you speak? And without fail, they're like 3. And I'm like, dude, I barely speak one language. So let's keep the apologies to yourself. You know what I'm saying? I mean, these guys are. It's amazing what they can do. And so. I mean, it's wonderful. Here's the thing: is it like it makes my day very difficult because I mean, I make my money. You don't make a ton of money in comics, first of all, unless you're Ed Brubaker or something like that. Don't get into comics to make money. You're not going to. I make my money writing movies and TV shows. I still do, and comics is kind of the passion on the side. And my life is now very complicated. I have a 1-year-old daughter, and so time is at a premium. So. Got it. So I'll go to bed at night, and I look forward to the day, the day ahead, the next day, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have all day tomorrow to work on this movie that is due at the end of the week. It's going to be wonderful, and then you go to bed. And remember, these people are in different countries and they're in different time zones. Indonesia is 17 hours ahead. The UK is 9 hours ahead. Even Colombia is 3 hours ahead. Right. And so you go to bed and you sleep for the 6 hours that your 1-year-old daughter will allow you to sleep. And by the time you wake up, you have 3 layouts from one of the artists and 5 layouts from the other, another artist, and you have 2 inks from this guy, and you have 4 pages from the colorist, and you have 17 pages from the letterer, and then your day's shot to hell. So it's a blessing and a curse, this sort of global marketplace. But
cool. Obviously, you can't tell about the other comic books that you're working on, but are there any other future projects, or what's the status of Aberrant that you can share with us?
Well, yeah, I mean, Aberrant is going to be released. The exact date is not slated yet, but the first 5 issues, the whole first trade went in this week. Mm-hmm. And it's being processed, and I mean the way this stuff works, it has to get it goes out in previews, the catalog from which comic stores order their books, and then you need the promotional period and blah blah blah, and so it takes a couple of months to get these things out. So it'll be this winter. Mm-hmm. Aberrant by Rylend Grant. I'm looking into the camera and saying that, shameless plug. So my guess is early next year.
Now, how did you find Action Lab?
Just sort of stumbled upon Action Lab. Yeah. I mean, there was. I mean.
Well, I guess. The one reason I ask is because we've had David Popose. He has a book with Action Lab, and we've also had Jason Inman and Ashley Robinson on the show. And they're part of Action Lab too. So it's just funny. Well, it's just interesting that a lot of independent creators are coming from Action Lab.
Yeah, Action Lab is a great outfit. I mean, let me say that right off the bat. Here's the thing: is like, I mean, the comic business is in a period of change now too. I feel like I'm just teaching a class on how these businesses are changing. But I mean, we're going to see. The next 5 years, we're going to see kind of radical shifts in the comic business, and it's really hard out there for a lot of companies. It is really what's happening is the comic shops, like the comic shop in your town. The margin for error is so small. Mm-hmm. The profit margin is so. They only have so much money. People only buy so many books, and we're in the age of variants, right? Marvel's going to put out the new Captain America book and have 6 or 7 variants.
They're bringing variants back, huh?
and when a guy wants to go and get all 5 Captain America variants, then they're not buying like. Got it. The next small image book, Saints or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it's really hard. It's really hard to get in an image. It's really hard to get in at Boom. It's really hard to get in at some of these kind of middle tier sort of places now, where it used to be a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. And there are good things about that and bad things about that. It's what I've said about the film business. I literally just outlined kind of the same concern with the film business. Yeah. And what I've said for years is, there's an opportunity for someone here in the film business. Like, again, if the conglomerates, you have a conglomerate, like Fox or whatever, where it's like making or losing $5 million, it just doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Well, okay, to you or I, $5 million gain would be amazing, right? And to a guy who, so there is an opportunity here for someone to come in and take advantage of this. Someone to whom making $5 or $10 million means something, and you can make some really good movies. There's a thirst for it, and that's kind of what Netflix is doing. Right. At this point, they're making some of these kind of movies that no one else will make. And to Action Lab's credit, they're one of the few people who have kind of realized this and seized on it, and Action Lab has found. Action Lab they're filling the Image has kind of essentially become its own major. Image used to kind of like fight for the little guy, and now they're a big juggernaut, and they're still putting out great books. I don't want to say anything, but there's a lot that's not getting looked at, and the people that founded Action Lab were smart enough to be like, man, there are books that aren't being recognized, and there is a sector of the population that's being underserved, and they've come in and they've done it, it's like these larger companies will boil it down to like, it's like, oh, well, Aberrant's a military book, like can't sell a military book, move on. and Action Lab, they're smart enough to look at the subtleties of everything. It's cool. Like, this is a really good meaty character drama, and that's what we want to put out, and that's what we want our name on. So,
awesome. Well, we're gonna start closing out the show, but I want to ask you a few questions. We sort of have a thunder round, which is like our random, off the bean path set of questions. All right. Yeah. And then we also have sort of like an art watch where we sort of rep like an artist or other creative that you think might need a little help with some exposure. So,
okay, nice.
All right. So we'll start with some thunder round questions. This year, we're celebrating Jack Kirby's 100th birthday, as well as Will Eisner's. Yeah. If you were to make a Mount Rushmore of comic book creators, who would be the four that you put up on there?
Wow, God, it's a good question. And there's the like, who are the latest, like who are the absolute greatest? I mean, we're at the Stanley Comic Con. It's hard to, but that gets very obvious. And I would shift more into the creators that really affected me.
Okay.
My Mount Rushmore,
awesome.
Brian Azzarello.
Okay.
We talked about that. 100 Bullets, I think, was just a gorgeously told story, just so complex, and the comics world really recognized that. He's written some of the better Batman arcs and everything like that. Garth Ennis is always a guy who I did backflips for. Is like his stuff is just so sick and twisted, and unlike anything that you've ever seen. Preacher, obviously, but even his arcs on Punisher.
Okay.
Where he was just, you would just flip through these issues, and it was like 4 panels per page, and you would just blow through them, but they were just so visceral and so kick you in the face, and God. Yeah, it's hard to argue with Stan the man. I can't. Stan is again, being such a Marvel nerd. It's like, I fell in love with comics because of Iron Man and because of Captain America and Jack also. It's hard to. It's almost like Stan and Jack are kind of one. Yeah. And I love the Ed Brubakers. I love a guy that's gonna kind of. I feel like he can very obviously tell a standard comic book story better than anyone, but he veers into these other lanes, these kind of mysteries and these noirish tales that you don't see out of a lot of people, and you kind of have to be a giant like that to be able to tell those stories. My greatest dream would be able to kind of tell stories like that, and for people to care about them, and for publishers to want to publish them, because it's hard to
All right. Earlier before the podcast, we were sort of talking about how some parts of like LA and San Diego, or particularly San Diego, the food scene was trying to get better, right?
Oh, God, yeah.
So, is there anybody, dead or alive, it could be real or fictional, that you'd want to have a meal with? And and where would you eat?
Where would I eat? Yeah. Okay, so like you're saying, LA right now, it's between LA and DC. Are probably the 2 best places to eat in the world right now.
Okay.
I would have to. It would be really hard to decide which city to go to, and then which restaurant to go to in each city.
Are you a Jose Andres fan?
Jose Andres is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
He has his place in Washington, D.C., right?
Yeah, he has 5 or 6 amazing restaurants.
Well, the only mention I bring that up is because he's in Puerto Rico right now. Helping out a lot of people.
He's been doing great stuff down there.
Yeah.
His restaurants are great. And in fact, some of my favorite chefs were actually sort of proteges of Jose Andres.
Okay.
And so
he was a he learned at a few other pretty good places too. El Bulli. Yeah.
You're dropping knowledge. I like it. It's definitely like sort of like an apprentice laden profession.
Yeah.
My favorite restaurant in LA is a Michael Votaggio restaurant called Ink.
Okay.
And it's just phenomenal. New American cuisine, but he's just doing stuff with food. It's it's art, but it's not so precious that I'll
have to check out that place.
I just highly recommend it. It actually just moved, and so they might be in a period of transition, but phenomenal restaurant. And another guy I really like, and he has restaurants in New York. He lives in D.C. right now. He's actually moving to L.A. David Chang.
Nice.
Of Momofuku.
Got it.
Fame.
Right.
And so if I were going to have a dinner,
he's moving to L.A.
Yeah, he's moving to L.A. He's opening a restaurant downtown, and so I guess what I would do is I would do it in L.A. and I would start at Ink, and then I would move to David Chang's new restaurant, whatever it gets called, in LA. And God, one person to have dinner with?
Well, whoever. It could be more than one.
God, yeah, that's
whatever comes to the top of your head.
Yeah, that's. We're at Comic-Con right now, and a Comic-Con state of mind. But how great would it be to sit down with my Mount Rushmore and just pick their brains? It's like, we've been talking a lot about that, right? And again, you have Stan and Jack there, and then like a degenerate like Garth Ennis, I say that lovingly because I'm also a degenerate. Azzarello sitting there, we're in a Comic-Con state of mind. Let me stick with that. Yeah.
Since your background is in movies, if a movie was made about your life, what kind of music would be on the soundtrack?
What kind of music would be on the soundtrack?
Yeah.
God. So here's the thing. You'll see it in Aberrant. Aberrant. There's not a ton of music that gets used in comic books because it's so expensive to get the clearances.
Okay.
But I wanted to make Aberrant very filmic, and so the music became a very central part of it. And so the first issue of Aberrant has 3 songs in it, and the first 4 issues of Aberrant are actually named after a song. So there's Don't Worry, Be Happy.
Okay.
By Bobby McFerrin.
Nice.
God, I don't remember if it's the second issue or the third issue is Hold On for One More Day by Wilson Phillips. What else gets used? My Way by Frank Sinatra.
Okay.
God.
That's a pretty eclectic mix.
You're Nobody Until Somebody Loves You by Dean Martin.
Okay.
Here's the thing is like I'm a massive karaoke nerd.
Oh, nice.
Like I'm obsessive, and I'm not just the guy that's going to go to a karaoke bar and sing one song. I have to get a private room first of all.
Okay.
And I love when I have a huge crowd.
We'll have to do karaoke sometime.
We should totally do karaoke. Right. But, I love it when, get 5 friends, go into a private room, blah, 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 blah. But I'm so fanatical that I will, if I have a free day, which is very rare these days, but I used to do it more often.
Okay.
I will go and I will get a karaoke room by my lonesome for 3 hours. And I will just sing every song that, because there's, if you have an audience, you don't want to subject them to certain songs, like Wilson Phillips, Hold On for One More Day, sung by a man.
Right.
Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You, sung by a man.
That's hard.
But, when you're in a karaoke room by yourself, you're able to workshop, anything. And if you bomb, it doesn't matter.
So it's okay. You're on the open.
Yeah.
It's the last call for the last song. What song do you pick?
What song do I pick? Last call. God. It depends on the mood of the room. I'll throw that out. I was at a wedding recently where they did karaoke for the rehearsal dinner, which is kind of awesome. Really depends on the crowd. I feel like here's the thing: there are certain songs that you can't do until the end of the night because your voice isn't ready for it. You have to kind of like get into it. And so. I made the mistake when I was at the rehearsal dinner. I did "Bad Romance" by Lady Gaga. I did it way too early in the night.
Okay.
And so I couldn't hit the high notes, which is really embarrassing in front of a large crowd. And so this is how I start to think: is that you have to program certain things at the end of the night. There's another one. I'll I'll do a duet with a woman sometime. I'll do Meatloaf's "Anything for Love," but I won't do that. And that's a really long song.
It is.
And Meatloaf, really hits that higher register.
Yeah.
And so that's an end of the night song also.
Whoa.
So yeah, you want to blow people away with that. Yeah.
Crazy.
Just go that route. Yeah.
I'll have to see that. Yeah. I guess we can go to the Art Watch. We are talking about comic books, and you have a huge creative team globally. I might add. Is there any sort of artist or other, writer or other creative person that you sort of want to, rep?
Well, the first thing I should promote is our mutual friend, David Pepos.
Yeah.
His book Spencer and Locke by Action Lab is. It's incredible. His one sentence pitch, which I think is like phenomenal.
Yeah.
What if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City?
That's awesome.
Which I think is the most brilliant.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's what I try to sort of the wisdom I try to impart to these people in these panels is like, okay, well, what if you should be able to sum up your story in a single line, and it's such a brilliant line, and it's such a great book. There's this book right in the middle of it. I think it's issue 3. Where a guy gets the main character gets sort of shot with a hallucinogenic drug.
The spaceman Spiff and the Rocky Man.
Yeah. And he imagines this this, and it's so Calvin and Hobbes. And it's so brilliant. It's a really good book. The other book that I highly recommend. It was the other panel I did this morning. Hex 11.
Okay. By
Lisa K. Weber, Kelly Sue Milano, and Linley Forrest. It's these 3 brilliant women, and the pitch is it's kind of like Harry Potter meets Blade Runner. And it's so good, and it's so cleanly written and so interestingly written. The art is just gorgeous, and it's these ladies that they started their own company. They don't have Image behind them or anything like that, and their book is wildly popular, and it's just so good. And
cool.
and I promise you, both of those books, just give it one trade, go out there. And you'll be hooked, man. You will wait in line for every issue.
Awesome.
Those are 2 really good books.
Thanks for those recommendations.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online?
Oh God. So my company is Half Evil Comics. So halfevilcomics.com. You can see a couple of the other things that I have in the works.
Okay.
None of the top secret stuff because I'm so interesting. But there's you have
to be part of Article 13, right?
Yeah. I can tell you what I have to tell you. So you can find some test pages from Aberrant and stuff like that. Just some and some more information on that stuff on the release. I am on Twitter at Rylend Grant. Nobody knows how to spell Rylend, so RYLENDGRANT. Okay. I'm on Facebook. I'm on reach out. You have questions. You want to holler at me. You want to tell me you disagree with
I've been to a couple of your panels, and I've learned a lot so far. So
cool.
Yeah. Speaking of panels, you have another one this coming
tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, tomorrow.
I guess by the time people hear this will be...
it won't be tomorrow. Tomorrow today.
Yeah.
At noon tomorrow. It is a sort of a reboot of our Long Beach Comic-Con panel, which you took video on how to get your first comic published.
Right. Yeah, and if any of our audience is interested in creating your own comic book, especially from a writer's perspective, I really encourage you to attend one or all of Rylend's panels that he puts together.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have some stuff to show you guys at San Diego Comic-Con. So
cool.
Come down to your neck of the woods.
Nice.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and for being on the show.
Yeah. Anytime, man. I love the show. Hall H is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you feel that we missed that you want our audience to know about?
No, man. This has been thorough and it's been fun and I'm excited to do it again.
Cool. Well, maybe we'll do the next podcast with you at a karaoke joint.
Yeah, we should totally do that. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks, bro.
Thanks
very much.
Guys.
All right.
Yeah.
Peace.
All right.
Cheers. Talk to you later. Hey everybody, welcome to the Hall H Show. I'm your host, Aaron Nabus, and I am back with Mr. Rylend Grant. How you doing?
How you doing, guys?
We just got done with his panel. What was your panel called?
It was getting your first comic published.
Right. I think that's an important thing not only for myself, because I eventually want to get my comic book published.
Sure.
But I think I highly recommend that panel to almost anyone that I know who's thinking about putting out a book.
Yeah, well, here's the thing is, a few years back, I was a screenwriter, but I had no idea what I was doing, comic-wise. I was sitting in panels like this, and I was just getting bad info.
Right.
All the info wasn't out there, and so, I just, I found some creator friends. We compared notes, and I tried to very succinctly sort of, put together the best information, the most pertinent information, and hopefully it inspires some people to create some books.
Awesome. Yeah. I guess we'll go a little bit into the panel later, but I first want to get into your book, Aberrant. Last time I had you on the show, you were talking about it at LA Comic-Con 2017.
Yeah, it was sort of just on the horizon then.
Yeah.
It is actually it went into previews like 2 days ago. So the previews for the uninitiated is the catalog from which comic shops order their stock. So you can literally walk into a comic shop right now and say, "Hey, I want this amazing comic book Aberrant by Rylend Grant." And not only do you need to order me a copy, you should order 25 other copies, because everyone who walks in your door is going to want this thing because it's awesome.
I mean, what you got there in your hand right there?
I have a couple of things in my hand. The first thing I have is I have the ordering information, and we'll get to that in a minute. I feel like an idiot. But so there is the regular version of the cover. Variants are big right now. People love to collect variants, and so our first issue variant, if you can see, is a Billy D. Williams Colt 45
That's pretty dope.
Variant. Yeah, we have our first celebrity endorsement, as Billy will tell you, and Billy is actually holding the regular version of the comic, which I think is kind of humorous. And as well, I should say, for legal reasons, this isn't Billy D. Williams. This is William D. Williams. But as William is telling us, Aberrant works every time.
There you go.
Not just once or twice. It works every time. So and so if you want to order it, you can just get on previewsworld.com, I think is the website, or you can get your previews catalog. If you just walk into your comic shop and say, "Hey, I want Aberrant," but the order numbers for the regular APR 181190. The ordering info for the variant, the William D. Williams, I should say,
William
variant,
D. Williams,
APR 181191. So do me a solid, go and order it. You won't be disappointed. It's a badass ride.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I know in the panel that we're going to talk about in just a little bit, you sort of recommend that people pitch the way David Popose pitches his book, Spencer and Locke. I guess for Aberrant, do you want to go ahead and throw out your pitch?
My pitch, Aberrant is a military-slanted 3 Days of the Condor if there was a superpowered badass waiting around every corner to ambush the protagonist. That's as cleanly and quickly as I can do it.
Okay.
So very much, if I can expand on that, like David went ahead and did, it's kind of a 70s paranoid spy thriller sort of thing. We've seen them recently, like Michael Clayton or Enemy of the State. But it really taps into those kind of like edgy, cool, paranoid, 70s films.
Cool.
It's one of those kind of come to life in a comic book form, but again, with superpowered badasses everywhere.
Are you still peppering in little some of your favorite music tunes in there?
Oh yeah. That's a really good point. Is Aberrant, unlike most any book. Here's the thing: is music, like popular music, it's very hard to clear. It took me months to clear these songs. It costs a lot of money. So most people don't do it. You don't see any popular music. The first issue of Aberrant has 3 badass popular music songs. It's almost like I tried to make it a filmic book. It's almost like a soundtrack on a movie or a TV show. Really kind of pulls you through. And then the next, 4 issues, they're actually titled according to a popular song.
Okay.
And that song is featured very prominently. So it's a lot of fun. I mean,
cool.
You're going to pick up this book. It's not going to be what you're used to, and hopefully you like it. Hopefully that's a good thing.
I'll be looking out for the Spotify playlist.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a really good idea. Actually, that's a really good way to promote it. Yeah. Look for it on Spotify. I'm not on Spotify yet, but this guy's going to tell me how to do it.
There you go. We are at WonderCon 2018 in Anaheim, California. You just got done with your panel.
Yes, I did.
Let's go ahead and talk about that, because this is the second time that I saw it, and I'm still blown away because you brought some new material in, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I just, here's the thing is like, I don't do much at these panels. I find really smart creators and I just kind of get out of the way and I just try to sort of throw them alley-oops and watch them dunk and watch them. We have now done this, I think this is the third time we've done it. Okay. We did it in Long Beach and we did it at Stanley's Comic-Con and we did it here and hopefully we're doing it at Comic-Con in San Diego in July.
Cool.
A month after Aberrant is in comic book stores everywhere. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, here's the thing is, I think I've said this to you before, but I have been, a couple of years ago, I was sitting in a panel like this, trying to figure out how to make a comic book. I had no idea what I was doing. I knew how to tell a story. I was a screenwriter, and I had been around the block for a few years, but all the information I was getting was bad. And so I just tried to, I tried to find people who knew and put together the pertinent information, and I tried to, sort of boil it down to about a 40-minute presentation that people could swallow really easily, and hopefully it inspire some people to make some books.
I think so. I mean, judging by the people that were talking to you after the panel.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally the most rewarding thing. Is I get nervous doing these things. I believe it or not, I get up there and I act like an idiot, and it looks easy, but getting up in front of 100 or 200 people is not the easiest thing, and you always wonder, how is it going to be, how's it going to be received and all that stuff. It's the best thing when you walk out of a panel and there are like 10 or 20 people waiting to talk to you and ask you questions, and they want your info, we've been doing it long enough now where I'm starting to get the emails from people and starting to get the Facebook messages being like, hey, the book's done, we're submitting it now, and all that stuff, and man, that's awesome because people did it for me. Hopefully, I can do it for some other people, and then hopefully those people can do it for other people, and that's how these books get made.
Yeah, I think on the last podcast that I had you on, you did make it a point to sort of pay it forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only way to it's the only way to be. I mean, there's no reason for competition. Everybody can eat. It's what I learned. It's what I learned in the film business. Is like, 80% of the jobs I've gotten in the film business have come from friends, or people that I helped 5 years ago. They hire me, down the line.
Got it.
You work with the same people over and over and over again, and in comics, it's the same way. You need a group of people that are going to lift you up, that are going to note up your scripts, that are going to tell you when something's bad, that are going to tell you when something's great. If you don't have those people, you'll sink. You're out in a really rough ocean. You can't swim every second of the day. Every once in a while, you need somebody to kind of come over and sort of pick you up out of the water when your head dips below. I have those people. I'm lucky enough to have those people. Jeff Leeds, Stephen Prince, Carl Nappi, David Pepos has become a great friend. David Schrader, who was on the panel today, is a new friend, but he's an awesome guy. I consider you a great friend, man. I love what you're doing, and I'm honored to be on the podcast. Here's the thing: so this is my second time. What is the record?
What is the record? That is a good question. Yeah. There's been people who've been on twice.
Okay. Because I need to set the record. So every time we see each other, when somebody gets ahead of me and you tell me, I need to come back and I'll raise my game up. I will write something awesome and I'll blow your mind with it. And so I need to be the leader in the club.
Well, there's somebody who's going to be on the podcast again for the third time, pretty soon. So we'll have to have you on again.
Yeah. Who is he or she? I'll
it's going to be Susan Botello. She's
garbage. No, Susan's great. I'm sorry, Susan. That was a joke. It was a bad joke.
She's awesome, peeps. Yeah. I'm actually the brand ambassador for her International Mobile Film Festival.
Oh, awesome.
So
which
is coming up in April.
Cool. Coming up in April.
That's right.
And April is when you can go into your comic shop and order Aberrant. Shameless plug.
That's right. There's nothing shameless about it because I'll be in line to get that book for sure.
Excellent.
Now, the people that were talking to you after the panel, what are some standout questions that you remember?
God, a lot of times, I mean, the beauty of that is so we get up in front of a large group of people and our presentation is very general. Look, this is what one would do if they create a book and they're trying to get it to a publisher, they're trying to find an artist, all these things. And everyone up there, including me, we're speaking from our own experience. So this is what I did, and so the beauty when we walk out of the panel and these people, sort of, corner us is that, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but when these people come up to us and they have their questions, is those questions are always very specific to their situation. Hey, I have this book, and that's what's awesome is when somebody pulls out an iPad and they're like, hey, look, I just did
saw
this
that.
book. And my first thing is always like, congrats, man. There's so many people out there that want to make a book desperately, but they don't think that they have it in them, or they think they can make a book, but they've never done it. Our message in these panels is always, there's no reason in today's market. It's so easy to find artists and collaborators on Facebook. There's no reason why, if you want to make a book, and if you have a good book in you, why you shouldn't be doing it. Right. And so when these people come up and they're like, hey, I made a book, that's awesome. That's
right. All you need is a compelling story.
All you need is a compelling story.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you putting all these panels together.
I hope people come see them,
Yeah.
And I hope people read Aberrant, and I hope people listen to the Hall H podcast.
Well, thank you so much.
I've been binging on Hall H recently.
Sweet.
And you guys are coming, man. Like the content's coming out. I'm really excited. I mean, here's the thing: is like there's so few people who are kind of like shining this sort of spotlight on creators like this. It's really hard to get the word out about your book. And you guys find really good people. Every book that you're recommending, every person that you're talking to is interesting. They have an incredible point of view. I really love that. I'm sitting up here as a white guy in my 30s, but I love that also you're finding different voices. That's really part of your mission, and that needs to happen. So many interesting creators with different points of view, coming from a different place, a different angle, and you guys are kind of one of the few people that are really kind of shining the spotlight on those folks. And
I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for being a support of our mission.
Yeah, doing God's work, or Joe Boo's work, or Allah's work, or whomever you're.
Well, let's shift the conversation back to you.
Yeah.
I guess we can do a quick thunder round.
Thunder round. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Can I stretch first?
Yeah, you can stretch. I do stretch too.
Yeah. Thunder round.
All right. Go. So, you have a choice of being a sidekick for a superhero or a villain.
Wow.
Who do you choose and why?
Oh God. Oh man. That's fun. God. You stumped me. Can I just go with my own book? I mean, that's the easy thing to do,
right?
Go
for it, yeah.
I mean, David is kind of he's an awesome hero. Here's the thing is, so David is a special operations commander. Basically he's the equivalent of like a Navy SEAL or an Army Ranger or something like that.
JSOC, right?
Well, it's what JSOC would be if superhumans existed.
Right.
So, thank you for remembering that.
And JSOC was a division that was led by Dick Cheney.
Well,
right?
JSOC was it was a component command of SOCOM.
Okay.
Basically like a Delta Force team that reported directly to Dick Cheney.
Okay.
but more so to like the executive branch of our government.
Okay.
Because now they report to Donald Trump. Then they
right.
reported to Barack Obama before that, and so David is a special operations commander, which is really, the easiest equivalent to a superhero that we actually have in this world, because these guys are, these guys walk on water. They're superheroes without the capes, I guess.
What about ninjas?
Well, ninjas are awesome too. Yeah. These guys are ninjas. These guys are the closest thing to ninjas. But so anyway, so David discovers, sort of like on a mission that these superpowers manifest. And so Aberrant kind of over 10 issues becomes the story of him sort of learning what that means, coming to terms with having powers, wrestling with the ins and outs of that. I'd love to be there to help him. And he goes through a lot of hard stuff. I'd like to be there to give him a hug when he needs it. I'd like to be there to tell him to get his shit together when he needs, to hear that.
So would you be like the second in command, or what would you be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's the thing is, so in the opening issue, David has his team that he's really close to.
Yeah.
They're his best friends, and they're colorful, awesome, amazing characters. And I don't want to give too much away, but he loses some of his best friends.
Right.
And so maybe I'd step in.
Okay.
Maybe I'd be his new best friend, and because I think he needs that. And I think by the end of the series, he sort of has that. he finds his new place.
Okay.
But
so like in Punisher, in the Netflix show, a little bit, no?
yeah, I think that's a reasonable. Yeah, I think that's a reasonable thing. Yeah, it is about this conflicted guy kind of becoming a hero reluctantly. So yeah, it's a fair comparison.
Cool. Yeah. You are leading a mission to Mars.
Oh, nice.
What four other people do you bring with you, and why did you pick those people?
God, wow, you're really putting me on the spot here. This is a good question. This is like deep philosophical stuff. We were just talking about David Chang, who is my favorite chef in the world.
Right.
I'm going to bring David Chang because you need somebody to cook you amazing food.
Yeah.
He's a seriously smart guy, so the conversation would never get old. Mm-hmm. And I feel like he's somebody I could just kind of hang with. I would bring my wife because I would miss her. Mm-hmm. I would bring my baby, my 17-month-old girl Naomi, because I would miss her also.
Okay.
How long is this mission? Is it just like a week-long mission? Because I could deal with leaving them if it was a week-long mission, but if we were going to like live on Mars for a while, I would need them.
Let's just say that it's definitely not a vacation.
It's definitely not a vacation, all right. So I'm bringing them, definitely.
Yeah.
Maybe I would also bring David. Can I bring a superhero with me?
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna bring David from Aberrant because some shit's gonna go down on Mars, and so we have the chef, I have my family, and we have a guy that'll
cool.
deal with things.
All right.
Yeah.
And I guess the last question for the Thunder Round will be, if you were president of the United States.
Oh God. We're veering into a dangerous lane here. Yeah.
This is gonna be a tough question.
Yeah. Okay.
What artwork would you hang in the Oval Office?
Wow, that is amazing. I have two favorite. I guess I would just default to the artwork that I have hanging in my house.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of an artist. His name is Mike Mitchell, who does these sort of these pop culture series.
Okay.
One is called Just Like Us, which almost these kind of like cartoony caricatures of pop culture characters that I really love. Mm-hmm. There's a Saddam Hussein print where it's Saddam Hussein reading Twilight and he's crying.
Oh my gosh.
and it's the ultimate kind of like kick in the junk, fuck you, like ironic twist. Uh-huh. There's another artist I like. His name is Scott C. or Scott Campbell, depending on the time of day or where you find him. Okay. And he does these almost stick figure like watercolor paintings of pop culture characters. He does his website is greatshowdowns.com.
Okay, I'll look that up.
Yeah, and so he goes into like TV shows, movies, and finds like great rivals. Let's say like Johnny and Daniel, and does paintings of them facing off. And we have a lot of work from him too. He's really good. Yeah, Paul Chatham is another great guy you should check out online. So my artwork in the White House, it would be sick. It would be twisted. It would be pop culture based. There'd be a lot of Karate Kid, some Boogie Nights stuff. Some Fargo stuff, maybe somebody getting put through a wood chipper or something like that. I think I think heads of state would really dig it.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We have another section of the podcast called Superhero Shoutouts.
Oh,
is there a person or any group of people out there you want to sort of throw a shout out to, because we can't do what we do by ourselves.
Yeah, so shout outs to collaborators and creators. That's a really interesting thing. I did one on the last podcast, and I don't want to double up. But let me go back to, let me just go down the line. I just became friends with David Schrader, who did a comic called Baby Badass for Action Lab, and it's funny and it's twisted and it's sick. It's I was comparing it to like an Andy Sedaris film. I don't know if you know Andy Sedaris from the 80s. It's really a trip. David Pepos is a David Pepos is a genius. Spencer and Locke is one of the best books I've read in the last 10 years.
I agree.
You had him on your podcast before anyone else did. You're going to be the guy that broke David Pepos. If David Pepos probably broke himself, but you helped. But in 5 years, Pepos is going to be writing Avengers, and you're going to be like, I need that guy. You and me, we're going to be sitting on the sidelines still talking about the books that we're putting together.
Right.
Carla Nappi is somebody that we always have on the podcasts. Really talented TV writer.
She was pregnant the last time.
She's pregnant and she has a beautiful baby boy now. Who's
congrats
wonderful.
to her.
Yeah, congrats to her. Her book Duplicate is going to be out by fall. It's just really good.
Awesome.
Jeff Leeds is a close friend, really smart guy who does a lot of anthology work. Was in the Not Forgotten anthology. And then finally, like shout outs to my artists who. There's Jambor Huska, who's a Hungarian guy who did the first issue of Aberrant, and then unfortunately had to jump off because he and I sold, along with another a really prolific, interesting director named Ryan Colucci, we sold an animated series.
That's right.
That is kind of a samurai western mashup called Orient City.
Okay.
There's a short online that's just phenomenal. And
Samurai City, you said?
It's called Orient City.
Orient City.
Which is kind of a samurai western mashup.
Okay.
And it's just really, just amazing world building. It's what Hollywood's looking for right now. And the streaming services in particular were all over it. So John Bohr had to jump off to animate and co-direct with Ryan Colucci this film, and if I can break a little news on your podcast, the breaking news, the good news about Aberrant, again, my book that is available for order in April and in stores in June. Because of that, because of this relationship I developed with John Bohr and with Ryan, the same company, the same machine is now they're looking at turning Aberrant into an animated series. So that's happening. And,
congratulations!
And hopefully, hopefully it goes to the next level and everything. We'll see. But
if it goes next level, you could be the sidekick.
I will absolutely. Maybe in the second season, I will make them draw me as a sidekick. That's the thing is, hey, Action Lab, let's get Action Lab signed on for 10 issues of Aberrant. So issue 11, I'm debuting as the sidekick if there's an issue 11. So Action Lab, make it happen. # make Riley a sidekick. You heard it here first.
That's right.
Hall H podcast.
Cool.
Let's do it.
I guess with that, we'll start closing out the show. Is there anything that we missed that you'd like our audience to know about?
No, man. You do a great job. Go buy Aberrant. Listen to the Hall H podcast. The Hall H show, as it were.
Yeah.
You guys are doing great work. Get Aberrant. It's going to be awesome. You're not going to regret it. I promise you. You'll love it. It's a kick in the junk, a kick in the teeth. It's a smooth glass of bourbon.
Ooh, I love bourbon. What are you doing after the con today?
We'll talk. We should talk off. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, signing off from WonderCon 2018. It's Aaron from the Hall H Show and my special guest here, Rylend Grant, who will, I guess he's tied right now for the most appearances.
I need more appearances.
Yeah.
I'm just going to start photobombing your interviews. I'll just be walking around in the background like Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Aberrant works every time. Listen to William D. Williams.
That's right. Cool. I guess we'll hopefully see you soon and definitely at San Diego Comic-Con, right?
San Diego Comic-Con,
okay.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm doing some panels there.
All right, guys. Cheers. Talk to you later.
Yep.
My name is Rylend Grant. I've been a working screenwriter in Los Angeles for, a dozen years or so. I've done film and TV projects for Ridley Scott, Justin Lin, F. Gary Gray, the Russo brothers, among others. And it wasn't too long ago, it was a few years back, that I decided to kind of dive into Comic-Con because it was kind of my true love. My first book, Aberrant, is going to be published in June by Action Lab Entertainment. Some visuals here. You can actually, it goes on previews this month, so you can actually order it. Here's our wonderful Stevie Wonder advertisement, and then our issue 1 Billy D. Williams variant cover. Aberrant works every time. It's really good to have celebrity endorsements for you. I'm going to have some of these just with me, so if you want to corner me in the hallway, or you want to find me on the floor or something like that, I'll hand you one of these. So I assume you guys are all here because you want to make comic books, and you haven't yet for some reason. And that's ridiculous. Do it. You're all capable. It's a wonderful time to be making comics. It is literally the best time in the history of comic books to be trying this. It's never been more possible. It used to be insanely difficult. You used to have to know an artist. You used to have to like come to a place like this and troll Artist Alley and beg people to draw your book and all of this stuff. We're in the information age, the age of Facebook groups and all these things. I have artists in Brazil, in Hungary. My go-to colorist is in Indonesia. My leveler is in
the UK.
You can find all of these people with like a click of a mouse. You bring your team together and you're going the next day. So get off your butts and do it. Hopefully this esteemed group of colleagues I have put on the stage here can kind of give you some insight on how to do that. I'm very careful about who I put up panels. These are really smart, really good people. What I will say is that if you have questions, a lot of these people are tabled today. Pepos will talk to you for 2 hours. I'll tell you exactly how to make your comic. That was how we met. So let me, without further to-do, as I say, let me introduce my guys here and my gals. David Pepos, immediately to my left, intern at LACC, and then served for years as a writer/reviews editor at Aberrant. A lot of you guys have probably read some of his reviews over the years. His first comic, Spencer and Locke. Do you have it or no?
Yeah, we have it at the Action Life booth, table 1227.
Nice. It was published, is it 2 years ago now?
No, just over the summer. Yeah, trade came out in August.
I feel like you and I have been doing this forever, so
Yeah.
It's not as long as I think. So you are currently writing series 2 of Spencer and Locke, if I can talk about that.
Yeah.
Also, David's pitching like all around town. He's dealing with every comic book company, so if you have a specific like, hey,
Yes.
what's the deal with Aftershock?
I will tell you everything.
Probably knows the ins and outs. Give me your elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Since I can.
Spencer and Locke, for those of you who don't know what the book is, it's what if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City? It's about a hard-boiled cop whose partner is his childhood imaginary friend. So I tell people it's a little True Detective, a little Fight Club, 100% love letter to Bill Watterson and Frank Miller. It's kind of a seedy, more psychological thriller that deals with abuse and trauma and mental illness and kind of the lengths the mind will go to protect itself from harm.
Lesson number 1, learn how to picture a book like that. He sums it up in a sentence, and then, in about 45 seconds, he gives you all the themes, the ins and outs. That's how you do this stuff. Sometimes you only get a minute. To his immediate left is Carla Nabby. Carla is a TV writer and script coordinator with credits on Suits, Bates Motel, and The Good Wife. I'm probably missing some, but her first comic book, Duplicate, I'll let you tell them about it because I will butcher it, unless you want me to butcher it, is soon to be released, hopefully by Vault Comics, sooner rather than later is my point, definitely by Vault Comics. Hopefully they get it going, yeah. So
Yes.
Go ahead, what's your deal?
So Duplicate, it came out of a pilot script I had written and I adapted it into a comic book, and it's set in the future during a pandemic of organ failure.
Could you speak up?
How's that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Start over?
Yeah.
Okay, so Duplicate was a pilot script originally that I adapted into a comic book, and it's set in the future during a pandemic of organ failure and focuses on the scientist who creates duplicate organs.
Cool, sorry about that. I'm sort of trying to stay out of the way of the tech fellow here. I think you need to Carla's left. We just dealt with the people who went the traditional publishing method. We are transitioning now into the self-publishers. David Schrader of Baby Badass fame is an interesting study because David has had a foot in both worlds. Basically, Baby Badass was like a 12-year odyssey or so. I'm probably going to butcher some of it.
Well, we had the idea in like 2006 my co-creator Christian Horn was here, and we just had this idea like, hey, it'd be funny if this baby was like kicking everybody's ass. And we didn't think much of it, and then he gave me a birthday card that had like some drawing. I said, well, why don't we try to develop this? And eventually we did. But it was a web comic, and then it kind of fizzled, and then we had it as a pitch, and then I got an artist in 2014, and then it took 3 more years to get the 3 books done. So, 2006 to 2018.
Yeah, and it
I'm right. Be patient.
You might have said this. I was kind of distracted by the tech books up here, but so it started out as a webcomic, and then eventually a traditional floppy with Action Lab Entertainment. I have a couple of my Action Lab brothers up here. David was, David was before kind of a filmmaker of note. His short films are kind of all over the internet and have kind of been well enjoyed. And he's a comedian, kind of trained in stand-up and improv and the whole 9 yards. So that's very apparent in his book, Baby Badass. Are you tabled or?
No, not here, but we do have a cosplay character walking around giving out free stuff.
Cool. And then to David's left is Stephen Prince, who he's kind of my self-publishing guru. I mean, how many different titles have you self-published? I feel like it's a lot. Yes. Yeah, 6, and it's and then you have another in the works. So let me go through it. The third, Unemployment, and what is now my favorite comic, I think, currently, is Monster Matador, which is kind of like if Danny McBride made a Santo movie, that's how you probably do a better job of pitching it.
It's that tone about a matador who's fighting monsters to make a better world for his daughter. In a future where monsters have sort of overrun humanity. And he travels from city to city, country to country, fighting monsters wherever they are with his sword and his cape.
And it's really good. It's really funny. It's not like anything you've ever seen. So go to Comixology and pick that up. And then at the end there, last but not least, I like to stick him on the end just to mess with him a little bit, is Jeff Leeds. And Jeff is he's our anthology guru. I think when I was sitting where you were sitting a couple of years back, and I think a lot of people kind of you guys come in, you want to know how to make the jump to comics. A lot of people skip the anthology sort of world, and I think it's a really good thing. Like, a single issue of a comic book, which you may have to produce in order to get sort of caught on, may cost you $3,000+ dollars. A lot of you don't have that. Anthologies are collections of short stories by creators. They cost a lot less, they take a lot less time. You can kind of workshop the things like, the difference between making a short film and a feature film. I highly recommend it if you want to kind of wade into the water. Jeff has been around the block 100 times with anthologies. He's had several stories published. I know the Non-Forgotten anthology, which you probably have a couple of copies of. The Red Stilo Vegas anthology. And Jeff, maybe somewhat against his will, got roped into actually editing an anthology recently. And I've seen him out promoting it. He was on Meltcast being like, hey, this is the anthology. So any questions you have about anthologies, Jeff will know us backwards and forwards, and hopefully he can sort of chime in here and there and give us the kind of anthology perspective. By day, Jeff is the exec at NBC. And so we have a lot of so that's our panel. Let me dive right in. So as per usual, I want to start right at the beginning, and that's with your idea. Because I'm certain there are plenty of you out there that think you have like the greatest idea since Why the Last Man. You just got to get it out a page, you got to run with it. Here's the thing, here's the disclaimer. It's like, that's great, and you need to believe in your idea, and I'm sure plenty of you have amazing ideas, but you can't just dive in willy-nilly. You have to have the right idea, and hopefully these guys can shed some light on what the right idea is. Whatever idea you commit to, it's going to be years of your life. David just got to tell you that he spent 12 years on Baby Badass. Think about, do I want to spend 12 years on this idea? Aberrant, everything broke right with Aberrant, and it took me 2 years to get it into previews. Into previews this month again. Go ahead, Margaret. Also, you may end up spending thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on art and everything, so do not commit lightly. And so my question to our very knowledgeable panel right now is, what makes the right idea? What are publishers looking for right now? More importantly, what are readers looking for right now? And there are no doubt missteps, things that will sort of leave you dead in the water from moment one. And so let's try to put those out there now so these people aren't spending 12 years of their life and $30,000 on something that's going to end up, sinking like a brick, Go ahead.
Well, it's funny. I mean, for me, I'm a big believer that if the execution is right and the premise and the concept is right, the audience will come. And so I think there's something to be said for believing in your work and it kind of burning in you and sort of being something that this is a story you have to tell. This is a story that you're going to stay up all night if you don't get it out there. For Spencer and Locke, we shop that around a lot. And a book that we pitched as Calvin Hobbes meets Sin City, there are a lot of publishers who were like, that's cool, we're not touching that. And so I'm probably like the worst possible advice for saying what do publishers want, because it took a while for us to find a publisher.
It's always going to take a while.
It'll always take a while.
You're going to get 25 no's before you get a yes.
Exactly, but all you need is one yes. And that's really the important thing that you kind of have to remember. The thing that for me, I worked as a critic for many years. I mean, really about 10 years worth of writing critiques on comics coming out every single week. And so for me, it's more of, nobody can possibly hate my ideas more than my own ideas, more than myself. And so that's the thing, like you have to be really, like, you can't delude yourself. You have to be like super harsh and say like, okay, can I pull this off? Like, I wrote a book about child abuse, and you have to really be very careful with stuff like that. Like we're not here to sensationalize or titillate or make light of any of this. And we try to make this kind of a nuanced book about mental health. For me, it's the execution. Can you make this book as good as any other creator-owned book you see in the stands? If the answer is no, move on. Or keep sort of building up your skills. I think Jeff working in anthologies is actually a very smart idea. I think I used to write lots of short scripts that would never see the light of day because they were all terrible and they all sucked. But that kind of helped me not be so precious about my ideas. And then when I found a script that I was like, no, I really want to commit to this, I was able to because I sort of put in the reps and learned how to write longer stories.
It's exactly like filmmaking, right? Whereas you have no business directing a feature unless you've directed 10 shorts and made all your mistakes.
It's saying like, you train for a marathon. And that's what these books are. I mean, you're going to spend years working on them. And you're going to probably spend a decent amount of money. And it's going to be a decent amount of aggravation and heartbreak and compromise and conversation. So you want to kind of start with baby steps. You don't want to overexert yourself. So the more training you can give yourself with these sort of short stories, even if you don't submit them anywhere, I highly recommend it.
Thank you, Ms. Carlin.
As far as what publishers are looking for, I think everyone wants a story that has strong characters. If your characters don't have a good backstory to them, then that's not going to pop off the page. So what I always recommend is kind of writing out your character's backstory. Even if you're starting a character at the middle of their life, you want to have everything that happened before that in your head so that it can help influence the way they speak. And it just helps you with how they're going to react to all the different situations you put them in, and just give everything another layer of depth.
Yeah, I guess I would just say, like, you better love your idea, because if you don't love your idea, like, no one else is, and have patience with it, take care with it, and even if it's the craziest, silliest, stupidest idea, if you're committed to it and you treat it seriously, I think that'll come through.
I think building on that, one of the most important things that's going to set your work apart, that's going to draw people to it, is your voice. And that's really one of the things that you have to develop, is what sets you apart from everybody else. Something like, Baby Badass. Everyone can take that idea, and you're probably going to have, everyone's going to have a different approach to it, and it's your approach that's going to sell the book. That's what people are going to be attracted to. It's like when you pick up a Stan Lee comic, it's Stan Lee, or Alan Moore, or whomever. It's that voice that you're buying. And with an artist, it's the same thing. It's your drawing style is kind of like, it's your voice, it's your handwriting. And the more unique you are, the more the specific point of view that you have, the more of you that you bring to it is going to help you succeed. So
I think that's a really good point. I just want to underline that. There were two very interesting things. If you don't love your idea, no one else will. And I would sort of expand upon that also. It's like, if you've seen it before, don't do it. I don't think in a million years have you ever seen Monster Matador or Baby Badass. These are two very unique worlds from two very uniquely twisted people. I mean that as the best compliment. I would say that first of all, but don't, there's no room for imitators here. Nobody is interested in that. Like, just think back to Pulp Fiction comes out and everybody flips for it, and how many terrible Quentin Tarantino rip-offs did we see for 10 years after that? They're all horrible, they're all forgettable. Find out who you are, what your voice is, what you have to say, and push that.
Yeah,
Sorry, Jeff.
you guys hear me? I would also just say, in addition to it being an idea that you love, it's your first idea. It's going to be the idea of the comic that really is your calling card, right? So if you're a writer, you want your first story to be the kind of comic that you would want to write in the future. Or if you're an artist, you want your first comic to be the kind of artwork that you draw in the future, right? So it's yes, it's absolutely true that you don't love your idea, other people aren't either, but it's also important to have an idea that represents what you want to do, what you want to be beyond that. Because once you have gone through all of the torture that we will describe for you to publish your first work, you should be proud of that, right? You want that to be a calling card that you then use to get the next thing and the thing after that. And so it's one thing to have a great idea, but it's really important that your first thing is actually the thing that represents what you want to do beyond that, right? Because if you're an artist and you somehow get, your first published comic is a children's story, that's not going to help you when you go to pitch to draw Spider-Man, right? And if you are a writer and your first work is, a detective story or something, then you can't really then use that to go write science fiction or something else necessarily, right? So you want to be thoughtful about what that first thing is, because not only do you have to love it and live with it, but you then have to use it. So you want to think really carefully what that first thing is.
Cool. So let's move on. We're going to.
Are you still? That seems very limiting to me. Like, I mean, I agree with what you're saying on the one hand, but I mean, just because you write a kid's book doesn't. I hope it doesn't mean you get so boxed in that you can't do other stuff.
So I think that's 100% true, and I'm not saying that people can't do different things. I'm just saying if you're going to do a first thing that you then plan to use as a calling card to go further, it probably ought to be the kind of thing that you want to do again, right? So it's not to say that you can't try all kinds of different things and do them for the first time, but if you want to sort of pitch a series that is a certain kind of series, it will help you to have done it before then, right?
It's the sad truth of any business, whether it's the movie business or the comic business, is that, it's ludicrous to say that Paul Thomas Anderson couldn't write a kid's movie. I mean, the guy could write anything. He could write an industrial film. It would be the greatest industrial film that you ever saw in your life. You get typecast. And so you can do it, and it's just, here's the things. You only have so much time. You only have so many resources. So spend them wisely, I think, is really what Jeff is saying, more than anything. I am known for writing muscly action movies in Hollywood. And if I go to a comic publisher and say, hey, I have this book, like Aberrant, available for order now. It's a muscly action movie. They're like, of course, that makes perfect sense. If I go and I'm like, okay, well, it's this thing about these teenage, girls, and they're in a relationship, and literally they're going to tune out right there, and I may talk for another half hour, and they may entertain me, but that's going to be the end of the meeting. So I think that's a good thing. I'm going to leave time for questions at the end. Let's try to muscle through this thing here. So I want to move on to submissions. So we're going to go ahead and concede that you guys are now sitting on the greatest idea since By the Last Man. You're going to move forward on it. You're willing to spend the time and the money. Now, how in the name of Joe Boo do we get it into the hands of publishers, right? So at first, I want to talk about, we can talk about how we contact publishers in a second. I want to talk about the form it should take, because there's going to be a lot of debate here. What should we be prepping? How far should we go? At what point do we
loop an editor at Boom into our thought process. When is it too soon? When is it too late? All that stuff. So
Well, some of this ties into the calling card thing that we were just discussing. You've written, if you've written anything in the past, that's your calling card, and you can use that to sort of say, hey, I'm David Pepos, I just wrote a book called Spencer and Locke. I would love to send you a copy just to get on your radar. That's how you can open a lot of doors with publishers. But we're here at the Publishing Your First Comic panel, so getting a little ahead of myself. For me, the very minimum you would need for a pitch, you need your cover. You need 6 pages of art that is colored, lettered, inked, all that.
And this is what you did for Spencer and Locke.
This is what I did for Spencer and Locke.
Actually.
6 is the minimum, absolute minimum, the number of pages any publisher will take. You probably, it can't hurt to do more. Then you need to do what's called a treatment. It's basically a book report summary of your whole story, from beginning to end, issue by issue. You don't need to fit every single detail, but you kind of need to fit the meat of it. And then, I added a cover letter, just explaining who I was, who my art team was. I like mentioning my colors and letters because I feel like they're indispensable. So I mentioned the books that they were on too. You'll find starting out that probably your colorist and your letterer will have more experience than you. So it's good to kind of say, hey, it's not like a total newbie team that I'm working with. And then just be prepared for a lot of rejection. It's the name of the game. It doesn't matter how good your pitch is. I had a book that got greenlit potentially this weekend. I've been shopping around for 6 months. And I can't tell you how many publishers I sent it to. They said, we love it, we think it's really clever, we think it's really funny. Either we don't know how we can sell it, or we don't have space for it right now, or it doesn't fit in with the rest of our publishing catalog. Sometimes it's not you.
Sometimes they have something exactly like it.
Yeah, there are market
If you already have a
forces.
second baseman, they're not going to sign another.
But having sort of the cover, the 6 pages, if you want to have some character designs, that doesn't hurt. But knowing where your story goes, because you're an untested property. No one knows your name. So you need to be able to say, I know where this story's going, and preferably keep it short. We talked about By the Last Man a lot, and the problem is nobody wants a 60-issue thing from somebody they've never heard of, because you could be crazy. You could be crazy, you could be, or worse, just terrible at writing. And so they want to keep stories kind of succinct. Spencer and Locke, the first arc was 4 issues. In part because I was like, this thing could put me in comic book jail, and I don't want to spend 12 issues or 18 issues or 20 issues on a book that's going to get me pilloried on the blogosphere. Thankfully, people liked it, so we're doing more. But keeping it kind of nice and tight keeps you from sort of hanging yourself.
Let me underline this point. This is the most important. If you walk away with one bit of advice from this panel, it's this. There's no way to get yourself dead in the water quicker than going and being like, well, it's going to go on for 100 issues and all that stuff. It's the worst thing you can do. I was idiotic, and then I pitched Aberrant as a 10-issue arc. I was a screenwriter. I didn't know what I was doing 2 years ago when I did that. I have since learned if I was smart. And in fact, I have 3 other books in the works, and they were all pitched as 4-issue arcs after I kind of learned my lesson. I think I got turned down a lot by companies that love the book but didn't. They don't know what they're getting into. They're spending a lot of money promoting it, printing it, the whole 9 yards. If nobody buys issue 1 and they're locked in for 9 more issues, it's bad news. Even really established artists. We're at Action Lab right now, and Sean Pryor, who is he's a former president. He's now the president of Creator Outreach and stuff like that. But really well-established creator, has a number of books. He just launched a book called Force, which is a really good book, kind of Any Given Sunday like behind the scenes of a football league. He was terrified to release it. It's a 3-issue first arc. And it can't be done after those 3 issues, and if they sell, then there's plenty of room to tell more stories. So present something that has the possibility to go on for 100 issues, but doesn't depend on going on for 100 issues or even 10 or even 6.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So what I did with Duplicant was I had done 5 pages and no one was interested because they couldn't see the whole story. They wanted to see the whole issue. So I ended up having to self-publish the entire first issue myself. And I was lucky that I was working 2 jobs at the time, and that was how I afforded to pay for the entire first issue. And I also kept going to conventions, and that's how I ended up finding my letter artist and my cover artist, who are both established artists in the industry. And I think those things, having the completed first issue and having those names behind me, are what helped me land my publisher at the end of the day. And as far as the proposal that I did, I kind of like Rylend had envisioned Duplicant as a 15-issue story, and so that was what my treatment had talked about. It went into detail only of the first 5 issues, and then it kind of just did a paragraph overview of what the rest of them would be, and it was about 5 pages, and my publisher was like, "This is great, but we're just going to do the first 5, and then we'll see from there if we're going to do anything after that." So I had to completely restructure the way the first arc would end to make it be a self-contained story in case it doesn't go past that. So that was my experience.
What do you think, David?
One of the things about taking 12 years is you have a long time to think about your story and extrapolate the world. But besides that, like, you know, Christian was working on it, and he had an actual baby at the time, and he said, "Well, I don't think I can put time into this, so, you know, let's try to find another artist." And it took some time to find an artist, so I would say, you know, marry your material to an artist that really worked. It took me a long time to kind of find someone that had kind of like a grindhouse look to it. This guy we found, Tim Larson. He's up in Northern California. I've never met the guy. I've never talked to him on the phone. It's only been through email. And he's done 3 issues for me. It took 3 years. But it's kind of like an Art Crumb meets like Silver Age comic style. And it kind of fit what I was doing. So once I had that and it fit, I made the first book. It took a while, and then I sent it everywhere that I could. And Action Lab was really responsive and liked it, and Jason Martin at Action Lab saw the potential for it, and that's the guy that signed a publishing deal. But again, it took a long, long time.
So here's my take on this, and excuse me guys, because I'm going to get to the sort of self-publishing take and the anthology take on this same question in a second, just to kind of sum this up. I spend a lot of my time listening to stories like this and trying to find the best like amalgamation for everything. So this is my current take on everything. What I love more than anything, if you can afford it, and I was a filmmaker for a long time before, so I was able to go out and find actual investors in my books and get a $30,000 budget to make Aberrant and everything. Everybody has that luxury, and everybody has that money in their bank account, and I certainly don't. So I like more than anything to have the first issue done. And David Schrader's point of view is an interesting one. I mean, basically what he's saying is, you know, make sure you have the right artists, all the right collaborators, you know, your book needs to sing on every level, the right people. I like to take that first issue to Image or Action Lab or any of these publishers and say, this is the book. If you give them 5 pages, they don't know, they don't know what that product is going to look like. They don't know if you can deliver. If you can just say, here's a book, this is what every book's going to look like, it's a lot easier for them to say yes. I don't want to inundate them with information right off the bat. I create a 1-page sort of pitch document that gives a little synopsis, talks about the themes. I mean, basically it's like a 1-page version of the spiel that Pepos gave here, which is amazing and makes me want to read more. I really envy your elevator pitch. And then I also, as everyone else has said, I do my 5-page or 6-page document that's really in depth, breaks it down into issues. I don't send them initially. I send the first issue, I send a 1-page document, and I say,
here's Aberrant. If you want more information, I have detailed breakdowns, blah, 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 blah. Here's the thing, is you're sending it to very busy editors. And editors, more than anything in this business, they're worried about the 30 books they're responsible that are actually being published right now, you know? They may get 20 minutes on a Friday before they like rush out to blow off steam with their colleagues and get a couple of drinks. To review the thousands of emails that they get from people like us. If they can very, very quickly get a complete sense of your book on a page, they're going to read it no problem, and they're going to get back to it one way or another. The one thing I will say is that I would say about 80% of the time, having the first issue done completely works in your favor. It gets confidence. There's certain places where that's going to hurt you a little bit. If you go to Boom, let's say, Boom is an amazing company, but you know, if you're an Image, you're delivering your book. You know, they don't have a say in how it gets produced or anything. If you're at Boom, there's going to be a very smart, very experienced editor who's guiding you through the entire process. Who's going to have, and that's how they want it to be. That's how they maintain their quality. They would like you to use their artists who they know will deliver on time, will deliver quality art. And so if you bring a finished book to Boom, maybe you're fighting off your back a little bit. But you know, it's different in every case, is what I'll say. And so Stephen, what I'm interested to hear from you is if you're, you know, if you're bypassing a traditional publishing method and you're putting it out yourself, which you've had a lot of success with, what are you prepping? Are you shooting from the hip? Are you? What are the pitfalls?
You know, going back to what these guys were saying, a lot of it. I'm primarily a writer, and you know, writing pitches, going to publishers. It's, you know, you're waiting time. You know, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years, and it's not so much. Sometimes you've got a great idea, but you know, it's a very challenging market, and it's, you know, it's a matter of, you know, can they fit it in? Are they going to commit to it? And it's challenging, especially if it's your first thing. For me, I kind of started drawing, and I just liked the challenge of it at first. But I wound up doing this like 200-page science fiction graphic novel because I'm crazy. And you know, the great thing about self-publishing is you've got things like you know, printing you can do relatively cheap. Comicsology Submit is fantastic because it's there. You know, you send someone a link. It's a great calling card. It's very easy to do. There's no barrier to it. So for me, when I have an idea, you know, I just do it. And part of that becomes your kind of your calling card. You can use that as published work, as finished work. If you want to go find a publisher or something, you have something to present to them to say, hey, look, I do this. You know, I'm legitimate, and you can read it, because people are more likely to read a comic book than they are to read a comic script. You know, they might flip through the first pages, like what they see, and you know, more than they would like a script. A script is just, it's time-consuming. It's boring sometimes. There's no pictures.
Let me just say that I'm kind of like in awe of how quickly you work sometimes, which is.
I just finished initially.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm thinking about, you know, again, I kind of have a slate of stuff I'm working on, so here's the thing: is it took me 2 years to get Aberrant into previews. In previews this month, by the way, you can order a regular comic shop. You know, it took David, who's a very determined, very experienced storyteller, 12 years to get Baby Badass into the store. I mean, I'll talk to Steven, and he'll be like, yeah, I just, you know, just on a whim, something came to my head. I started drawing something yesterday, and then like 2 weeks later, it's on Comicsology. So that's kind of awesome, and it really speaks to where I think the business is going.
Yeah. And one other thing I want to add to that, I think I had mentioned something to Rylend, this idea that I did a pinup for just on a lark, and I'm actually doing it now as a comic, and I just finished the first couple. But what I'm doing with it, just another avenue, is I'm actually teaming up with a podcast, and it's going to be kind of like their official comic book. So, sometimes you just have to think outside the box too. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a comic. It doesn't necessarily have to be on Comixology. But there's a lot of different avenues to promote your work and to get your work out there. And podcasts are a big thing right now, and they need content. And so it's something to do.
That's good. So Jeff, I think that I would say that 90% of the people who walk out of here and commit to actually producing something in the comic world are going to go the anthology route. I think it's a smart way to go. I think it's a lower risk, more reward way to go. So as a frequent contributor and now editor of really well received anthologies, how do we get on the radar?
So the submission process for anthologies is a little bit different in a couple of different respects. By the way, how many people are kind of see themselves as writers here? How many people see themselves as artists? So this I think applies to both, right? So in anthology, in the world that you guys have also described, right? The process of submission to a regular publisher is just this non-stop, all the time, 24/7, soul-sucking devil, right? It's just happening all the time. It's happening here, it's happening every week, every weekend, right? Anthologies generally have kind of a short, compressed time window, right? Someone announces, hey, I'm doing an anthology, it's like a chum in the water, and 100 or hundreds of people are going to start very quickly coming up with what their plan is, and the window to submit to is going to be finite. It's not an ongoing thing. It's going to be open for a period of time, and so you need to kind of be thoughtful and be able to react quickly, because you're either in or you're out in that time window, right? The good news is that the submissions process for that tends to be a little bit easier. You certainly aren't going to. You often don't come to the anthology with certainly your whole story done. You often are sort of asked for kind of a pitch, maybe character designs or sketches, and stuff like that. And one of the anthologies I did, it was the theme was Las Vegas, and we sent in the pitch, and then the editor asked me for a bit more, which was sort of like, okay, I got the sort of elevator pitch version, but then they wanted a kind of page-by-page outline, so it's not a full script, but just hey, this is going to be an 8 or 10 page story. Let's go through what happens on each page. That's about as much detail as you might be asked for in a typical anthology setting. But the trick is you've got to have a good idea, and you've got to.
And here's what I like about anthologies, and you and I have had this conversation, is that it can be overwhelming. Let's say just editor from Boom cornered you and said like, hey, what's your comic masterpiece? Give it to me right now. You might be overwhelmed. You can do anything, set it anywhere, any main character, whatever, and it can be hard to deal with. What I like about anthologies is they give you like a sandbox to play in. Again, not forgotten, it is an anthology of public domain superheroes. And they actually send you a list of public domain superheroes, and it's like, hey, give us stories on these guys. And Jeff is a comic nerd and a bit of a comic historian, and he knows a little bit more about this stuff than your average bear. And you had an interesting take on it. Same thing with the Vegas anthology, and you did a smart thing with the Vegas anthology where you're like, okay, well, everybody's going to do gambling stories, everybody's going to do this, and then you found like the one aspect of Vegas that nobody had covered, and you ended up with a really great story of it.
So that's a really good point. I think you have to expect that there's that sort of chum in the water moment that everyone is going to kind of come up with stuff that's against whatever the theme of that anthology might be. And I think my thought process certainly was, it's Vegas, of course everyone's going to do a mob story or a gambling story. Now, could I have written the very best mob gambling story? And maybe I would have gotten it, possible. But I didn't. I wanted to try to improve my odds in the Vegas story, and said, what can I do that would be a little bit different? What are things that I think are weird about Vegas that are not the most obvious things? In the case of the story that I did, it ended up being about a drive-through wedding. And so I thought that's another sort of weird thing that happened in Vegas. And so, you just have to kind of look for that twist on the theme that's going to separate you and help you stand apart, because, again, in a very short amount of time, a whole lot of people are going to come off that theme and probably come to some similarity.
That's a really good point. So I'm gonna drop one more nugget here before I throw it open to questions, because I'm certain you guys have a lot of them. I don't want to beat you guys up too much, but what I will say is that any route you're going, whether it's traditional publishing, anthologies, whether you're self-publishing, you're always selling yourself and your point of view as much as you're selling your idea. A lot of people can just get caught up, on the idea, but an editor at a publisher is not just betting on the story, they're betting on you also, so give them a reason to do it. I wrote movies for years, so an editor had a reason to believe that I could deliver a good story and deliver it on time. David had written about comics for years, and so people might think, oh yeah, he knows a little bit about this stuff. Carla, again, a TV writer, and I can go on and on and on. But also, it's really about the point of view. I mean, I think this, unfortunately, this panel is it's kind of, we're sort of part of the problem. There are way too many white guys in their 30s and 40s in comics. And the beauty of what's happening now is that people are starting to remedy that. So what I'll say to everybody, and this is going to sound really weird coming from like a white guy in his 30s, there has never been a better time to be a woman or to be a person of color trying to break into comics. People are thirsty for your stories. Don't shy away from it. Double down on your point of view. People want to hear those stories. So please, please, please tell those stories, and you are twice, if not 3 times as likely to get, signed because people want those stories now. And so let me just throw it out. Are there some questions? I just got the 5-minute thing, so I'm sure there's some. Go ahead.
Quick practical questions: submitting email, hard copy, explore that, and also working on your letter as colorist reading separation.
Unless it says otherwise on the publisher's website, always email. They don't want packages or anything like that. Letters, I would just look on Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook. I mean, there's a lot of...
They're really good Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Connecting comic book writers and artists. I mean, it's where I found everybody.
Is Digital 11 still the thing or no?
I think
It was a long time ago, so.
But definitely make sure that you find a letter. Don't try to do it yourself. That's like, it's a reason why like 9 out of 10 pitches were rejected. It's because of terrible lettering. So like, spend the money.
Yeah, and what I will say is that publishers and editors do not want to be approached at cons. It's a common mistake is that you're gonna find Matt Hawkins in corner room and try to talk about your story for 20 minutes when he's at a con and literally he's doing all kinds of business. You can go up, you can say, hey man, I'm a big fan, love this book, can I email you something? How do I get something in front of you? Matt hands you a card, you walk away. It takes 30 seconds. You want to do that 5 times at a con. Just get cards, email them later. A week after the convention, the week they come back, all this work is built up, they're gonna plow through it. A week after, hey Matt, talk to you briefly, here's that thing I was talking about, let me know what you think. I think that's the way to go. Is there somebody else?
I have a question for Chang. I think it relates. I produced a TV pilot last year and released a little pitch on the networks. If you turned yours into a comic book, would you take that also into a network and still pitch it as something, or you just did it as a comic book group? I'm just curious.
So Duplicate was a pilot script first, and I had used it to try to help myself get staffed. And because I have 1 TV writing credit on Suits, I didn't have enough traction with just my script. So I decided to do the comic book to try to help me get more traction. Because then it's an easy visual way of showing my vision to these busy executives at the networks and studios what this world is. This is a complicated sci-fi world. Yeah, so that's, I think it was definitely helpful to do, to have the comic book. Yeah.
Did you get your agent submit a comic book, or did you just do it on your own? Did you do you have a writing agent or writing?
I do. I have a TV agent. But as far as the comic book, getting a publisher, I did that on my own. It's funny that Rylend that said don't go up to Matt Hawkins when I kind of went up to Vince Hernandez, asked him, and I cornered him. Yeah, I cornered him after a panel, and at that point I only had a script for Duplicants, and he was very generous with me, and he actually read my script. And then he's the one that helped me find my letter artist, Josh Reed, who was the letter artist for Aspen for years and years, and now he's at DC Comics. Rylend helped me get my artist, and then I had another friend who had a comic book, and that's how I got my cover artist.
So I hate to cut the questions off. We always run into this problem. We will be standing in the the entryway right outside the thing. If you want to corner us and ask us anything, we'll stand there for a good while. You can follow everybody up here on Twitter, since I couldn't have this up when we walked in. I don't want to go too long here. Let's just go down the way here. Let everyone know how they can contact you. I know some of you are tabled here, so just let everybody know.
Yeah, you can contact me on Twitter, just Pepos D, it's my last name, first initial. I'll be tabling at the Action Lab booth, table 1227, starting around 4:30 today, and then I'll be there all day tomorrow.
I'm on Twitter and Instagram under Museums by Crazed, and I also have a website, carlinappy.com, which also has contact information for me.
Schraderopolis and the Baby Badass for Twitter, and there's also babybadass.com. I'll have some free stuff outside if anyone wants it.
Excellent.
At the Steven Prince on Twitter, there's a Monster Matador fan page on Facebook, and there's a website, monstermatador.com, which is down right now, but I will get it up shortly.
And everything is available on Comic Supplement.
Everything's
And I highly recommend you guys go read Monster Matador. It's, like I said, it's my favorite comic book right now.
It's because I gave you a candy.
At Jeff Beats on Twitter. I'll have some copies of the Not Forgotten anthology with me. We'll be selling online shortly. And we're really happy to take more questions. We know how difficult this is to do. We've all been through it, so please come find us.
Yeah, please come see us. I'm at Rylend Grant on Twitter. Like I said, Aberrant is available in order right now. And I have a couple of one-sheets here.
Thank you for listening to the Hall H Show podcast. Your support means a lot to us. We loved having Rylend on the show and can't wait to have him back on again. Please check out his comic book, Aberrant, and also one of his very informative panels if you happen to see it available at a Comic-Con you are at. You can find this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and our website, hallh.com. If you believe in our mission to be the voice of independent creators, we would appreciate a rating and a comment on iTunes. And please spread the word on social media using the hashtag HallHShow. Peace, cheers, and don't forget to support indie creators like Rylend Grant.